So welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us this morning. It's morning in Vancouver for the next session in the reading group series associated with our current exhibition, Gives On and With Decolonial Moves of the Transcultural, which is guest curated by Noor Bangu, and I'll just hand over to Noor in just a second. My name is Laurie White, and I'm the program coordinator here at the Ore Gallery. And I just want to acknowledge, first of all, that the Ore Gallery is situated on this unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Noor, and she can introduce GLAM Collective.
Thanks, Laurie. So today I'm speaking from Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It's also now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And it's very sunny in Toronto, and I'm very excited for this conversation. And yeah, we'll be going for an hour today. So I'll quickly introduce the exhibition and then introduce the speakers. So this exhibition Gives On and With takes shape as a reading series and an exhibition that thinks and rethinks through decolonization through multiple perspectives, all in an effort to really experiment with speaking from and listening from different locations and trying to build a more relational future. So yeah, this whole exhibition has been an exercise in collaborative thinking. So I'm really beyond excited to invite GLAM Collective, who have been documenting collaborative practices in Indigenous art and have themselves contributed to this field over the last few years. So yeah, the GLAM Collective, today we have Dr. Julie Nagam, Dr. Carla Taunton, and Dr. Heather Igloo-Liorte. And they are a collective of scholars who work on and through Indigenous theory and methodologies, public art, performance art, digital technologies, and curatorial and artistic practices that engage with space and place. GLAM Collective was founded in 2018, but they have more than a decade of experience prior to that, collaborating through publications, exhibitions, research creation projects, presentations, symposia, workshops, and other initiatives. And notably in 2016, they co-edited the special issue Public 54, Indigenous Art, New Media, and the Digital. And we'll be looking at a text from that publication today. So yeah, welcome GLAM.
Thanks so much
for having us.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, you guys go. I was like, how do you guys want to start? I mean, this is you're watching the collaborative method in action. So.
Since we're such a small group, I think it would be nice if we all got to introduce ourselves.
Yeah, I think that
quickly.
I think that would be awesome. I'm streaming live from Treaty 1 territory in the homeland and the heartland of the Métis Nation and the heart of Turtle Island. I know Heather always laughs when I say that one because I just for you. Yeah. And we're really excited. Actually, Heather's a guest right now in our territory, and we're just trying to get Carla's claws over. Like we got to just hook her in and then reel her over here soon enough. So
well, it wouldn't be that challenging. Both my maternal, like my nana and my grandma were both born in Winnipeg. So we have, and my mom who's joined us today, spent some time as a child living in Winnipeg. So we have family ties there and a lot of love for the prairies. I mean, we're coastal folks too. But.
Unasakut, I'm Dr. Heather Igloo-Liorte. I'm an Inuk from Nunatsiavut, but today, as Julie said, I'm joining you from Treaty 1 territory and homeland of the Métis, center of the continent, according to Julie, depending on how you draw it. Carla?
Hi, I'm Carla Taunton. I'm joining you from Mi'kma'ki, from Kjipuktuk and Halifax, the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. I'm originally from Coast Salish territories. I was born in Richmond, British Columbia, and it's wonderful to be with you today.
And so I guess I'll just call on people because I recognize at least one face. Hi, Lisa Ravna. It's nice to see you. Coming in from, it's nighttime where you are.
Yeah, it's 7 in the evening, or now a little past. So hi, nice to see you all. Yeah, should I just introduce myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sitting in what is now known as Norway, in the capital. But I am Sami, with home communities on the Norwegian and Swedish side of Sápmi. I do mostly, well, I'm an indigenous scholar, so I work mostly looking into aesthetic practices, epistemologies, ontologies, etc., etc. And yeah, I don't know, it's a little bit, I just got my dissertation approved last week. So yeah, I'm kind of still a little bit not really down on earth yet, but lovely to see you all. I'm looking really forward to this. It's going to be so nice to not be sitting filled with anxiety, and either anxiety or stress working. So I'm just gonna take
I was
it
like,
easy.
are you stressed? You're stressed crafting, like you're doing your dolce, I think. Like I saw some stuff going on and I was like, oh yeah, you got it. I'm just, yeah.
Hey.
Oh, gorgeous.
Oh, wow.
It's it's a form of mental health at this point. Just sitting, like trying to realize that I'm still alive and everything is okay. So, but it's gonna be good. I'm really looking forward to it.
We're glad you're here. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then I see Denise. I do it like romper room.
Hi, I'm Denise. I'm director curator at Or Gallery for the moment, and I am working from home today, so social distancing workplaces, but I'm glad to be able to join online. And yeah, I'm originally from Toronto, but I'm now happy to be working and as a guest here on unceded Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish territory. Yeah, looking forward to this conversation.
Fantastic. Welcome. Thank you. I guess we thank you. Kit?
Hi, my name's Kit. I am a curatorial resident at the Or Gallery right now, and I am currently on the unceded territory of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and I'm very excited for this reading group.
Awesome. Allison, you're next. Actually, you just turned your camera on. Oh, no, you're not Allison. Sorry, Jill.
Hi, I'm Jill Weaving. I'm on the unceded territory of Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh. My family came here in my grandparents' and parents' generation from England, and I was lucky enough to be assigned working with reconciliation with the park board when I worked there. So thanks very much. I'm really looking forward to today.
Wonderful. And now, hi, Allison.
Hi, sorry, I had to switch headphones. I'm Allison. I'm a PhD candidate at UBC in art history, and I'm coming to you from Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish territories today. And happy to say that I lived in the center of the universe in Winnipeg for a number of years. And I'm really excited to hear what everyone has to say today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Next to you for me is Kendra. Can't hear you. Oh. We'll come back to you. Hans, how's it going, Hans? Nice to see you.
Hans.
Hi, my name's Hans. I'm an MA student at Concordia University, but I'm joining you guys from Silix Okanagan territory. I've been following the GLAM collective for a couple of years now, and I'm fortunate to work with Dr. Goliorte and Dr. Taunton on a publication that's wrapping up. So yeah, I'm excited to listen into the conversation.
We're so glad you're here, Hans.
Yeah,
I was like,
good to see
keyword
you.
wrapping up.
it is. We're wrapping up.
We're getting
Thanks to
there.
Hans.
Kendra, I don't know if you got your sound working, but Julia, hi. We're just doing some quick intros. Kendra, Julia, Cheryl.
Hi, Mom.
Love it. I'm so
My mom's
jealous.
joining you from Sawasan territory.
Okay. All right. Let's get started.
All right. So I thought maybe we could start a little bit on, like, because Nora's got an exhibition that's specifically focused on collaboration. And I think that maybe we could start from that place of, how we all got to meet and then really saw a beautiful kind of synergy kind of happen. And, we joke a lot that we basically work a lot just so we get to spend time together and get to do some really great used to do some really great traveling, not right now, but under normal circumstances, yes. And I think, we talked a little bit about, we had just did a talk not that long ago, and we, it was really interesting to think about, one of the questions were, what do you think some of the long-term impacts are? And I think that, it's not that as scholars, I think we are always asked those kind of questions to think about those long-term impacts and what those projects look like. But for us, I think it's the chemistry and synergy of the three of us and how well we get to get along together and really put trust and reciprocity into the mix. And I think that, that's I'd say one of the key takeaways, especially in terms of collaboration. But I feel like, you need to be able to have trust on both parties to be able to collaborate and work together. And then the next kind of stage is like co-creation, right? And I mean, one of you guys want to pick that up, or we can talk a little bit more about, the fun stuff like how we met.
Do you want to go, Heather?
I was waiting for you to go.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, Julie, thanks for that. I'm speaking specifically as a white settler. So I have the opportunity to work with these two incredible Indigenous thinkers, women, who are both my colleagues and also my friends, and I see them as family. But in order for us to have built these relationships, there's been work that I've had to do on my own. And so I also talk a little bit about that idea of settler responsibility within our collective. And there's projects that, are appropriate for me to be a part of within our collective of GLAM. But also the responsibilities for myself and for me working with other settlers and other settler institutions around reducing harm. That's kind of the focus a lot of my notions and my ideas of reducing harm, both in terms of appropriation and in terms of practices and systemic racism, and then that decolonial work that you have to do on your own. And so that is a part of our collaboration as well. So there's an Indigenous and settler, not to create a binary in this conversation. Obviously, there's a more complicated understanding of who lives within these territories now in terms of diaspora, in terms of BIPOC relationships and alliances. But for GLAM, the three of us working together is, this idea of I see it as being in relation. Thinking through nation to nation responsibilities. And now that I live here in Mi'kma'ki, because of these really old and deep-rooted treaty systems here that predate even the peace and friendship systems of the 1700s, we have the Wabanaki Confederacy and others that really show a means of working in coexistence. So the idea of co-creation follows for me now an understanding of being in treaty, being in sovereignty, and being in relation. And when you are within that is that personal and also collective responsibility.
Thanks for that, Carla and Julie. And so the way that we did meet is Carla and I met on the first day of our master's program. Some of you are probably grad students as well. And so, and it really does kind of speak to our ongoing relationship because we were pitted against each other for the same practicum placement. We both wanted to work at the Museum of Civilization in the Indigenous Art Department. And they said, well, we'll have to decide between you, or do you want to decide amongst yourselves who's going to get it? And we said, why can't we do it together? So we did. And so I think that is kind of a framing way for the generative kind of relationship that we've had now for over 15 years. A couple of years after that, I was at a conference at the Native American Art Studies Association in Albuquerque.
No,
And
NASA. It was NASA in Arizona, I think. Arizona.
NASA,
That's
not
right.
Native American. It was
That's right.
not NASA, but NASA. And so we were in Arizona, and I like to joke that Julie picked me up in the bar. She came over and did just introduce herself. She said, "You guys sound like you're having fun. Can I join you?" And so, and then Carla, I don't know if you want to tell your part
Sure.
of this.
Just a little while after, I guess Heather called me to let me know about this incredible scholar, new friend named Julie. And a few months later, I had just finished my dissertation. And I think Julie and I, we finished right around the same time. And my supervisor at the time, Dr. Linda Jessup at Queen's University, called me as basically she had left Julie's defense at York University to say, okay, there's an exceptional emerging scholar, Métis scholar. You have to know her. Her name's Julie Nagel. I'm like, oh, Heather, I think we're going to know each other. And she said, that's great, because either you need to be best friends or you're going to be in competition, because some of the ideas you both have done at the same time, there's mirroring and there's a lot of actual kind of coexistence within that. So cohesion. And so I thought, well, that's great, because I've heard great things about her. And we were able to meet actually at ACC in the fall of 2011. I think that's the first time we actually got to sit down next to each other. And the rest of it, since then we've been working together. So
we really just formalized GLAM in 2017, but we have been, like Carla said, we've been working together for much longer.
Yeah, and I think also too, just those like, they're kind of like fun examples as you see me laughing or smiling at each story, because I love hearing them. But it's about decentralizing the kind of individualism and the idea of the individual curator, the individual voice, the individual author, especially within scholarship. It's all about, you propagating your work, and it's your work, right? And so, and I think in a lot of the ways, one of our first formalized projects we did was in 2008. No, 2000.
11?
Yeah, maybe. No, I think maybe that date's wrong, because I feel like we did 2009. Yeah, maybe it's 2010. Anyways, in that zone, we applied for our first shirk. And so, and what we had actually done was quite different. And I was the principal investigator, but we had wrote it as a collaboration between the three of us. And I know when we got information back from the reviewers, that this was a really different model for them. And that was actually pre kind of research creation, which then came later, and we can talk through some of that. But I think that, some of the work that we were doing specifically was looking at, both Carla and I had written quite a bit on performance art. And there was a lot of nice tie over to the work that Heather was doing, and also thinking through media, digital media, and performance art, and these kind of like cross conversations, because there was a lot of performance, especially Indigenous performance artists, that were using media in their practices, right? Yeah. And so, for us, we all three of us had just recently gotten jobs. And there just wasn't material to share with students the way that there is now. Like now you can do a Google search on any particular Indigenous artist, and, now there's quite a bit of material to be able to look at. But, 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. And so we started to put together a database of Indigenous performance and new media artists. And so we were really, I wouldn't say selfishly, but, motivated by making sure that students had access to that material, so that when we were teaching those courses, that we could actually draw on that information. And I think that, that's also the kind of starting time of where people are really starting to push for kind of digital archives, the conversation around the importance of the contributions of Indigenous artists. And not that it wasn't important or before that, or even now. It's just that I think that there's a particular moment of time, and I would say it was, just before 2010, where there was a real need, or we could see a real lack of opportunity in terms of, finding that actual information or holding that data so that we could share that with students or for scholarship or research purposes.
Even library holdings, archives, there was just a lot of, in certain places, like if you're at some place like UBC, you would have had, strong holdings. But a place where I arrived to Halifax, to NASCAD, which is a Nova Scotia College Art Design University, so the Emily Carr of the West Coast, or the OCAD, or however you want to see it. And there hadn't been anyone teaching Indigenous art histories. And so the most recent publication really was like 1999, and this was in 2011. And also there, so there were some catalogs, but there's these massive gaps. And so people were coming just to my office trying to find like students, Indigenous students and BIPOC students, as well as just white students, wondering where are these catalogs and where are these publications? So having a database too, to be able to say, oh, you know what, this is open source, check it out. And we are also getting a lot of our colleagues from across the country asking us, I'm trying to incorporate this into my teaching. What are the best resources? We know there's gaps in the literature. Where do we find these things?
So that's really where the public special issue came out of, and the article that you may have read for today's conversation is trying to take what we had been developing in terms of what we've been learning about, not just the artists of the archives, but who was doing the writing, because as Julie and Carla are saying, there had only been 2 or 3 previous books. There's a really important transference transition technology.
Yeah.
And a couple of other things, and like Carla said, it's not that it didn't exist, but that it was hard to find, out of print. Articles were sort of far-flung in text where they would be, the one Indigenous essay included in the volume of other works. And so we really wanted to think about how do we concretize and make visible these histories and what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think especially for public, our desire was to also showcase some international Indigenous media artists. And I think that, I know that you guys both will agree, is like we're leading the way in the kind of creation and excitement around digital and new media. And especially if we look at, countries that have shared colonial histories like Australia, New Zealand, and the United States, which was a big focus for us to kind of think about mapping out some of that history in each one of those spaces. And just what Heather said, there were 2 prior books. We had TTT and Coded Territories. And, we actually, both of those came out of more, I'd say, artist-driven creative spaces, and not so much in terms of a double peer review kind of scholarly engagement, right? And I'd say there were definitely some scholars that cross into both of those spaces. But I think one of the most important contributions that I think that we give with that overall publication is that, we not only come at it from scholars, and some of us are makers as well, but then also kind of layered in the kind of shared colonial histories of different territories, and not just territories within Canada, but, just what I said, broader in terms of international territories. And I think that, for us, we are trying to map out, all of those contributions and making sure that we could have a certain amount of people in the table and in the mix by showcasing some of the artists that we showcased, and then making sure we get some of the writers. I know Heather and I got to hang out with Marlene Mills, who writes an exceptional essay in that publication. That was last year, or I guess a year and a half ago already.
And it's a text where it's also where I started thinking about, at the time we were bringing in other Inuit peoples from around the Arctic. So bringing Alaska and Greenland into conversation with Canada, which I think was, it started to be really generative for my way of thinking. And now, of course, we have been moving into thinking about the entire circumpolar world and the parallels and the distinctiveness between Sapmi and Inuit Unanga.
Yeah. And so that's why we were really trying to draw on Linda Tuhiwa-Smith's kind of notions of gathering and visiting. And so that's also where we were, the 3 of us were using those types of those kinds of methodologies and theoretical frameworks in our own writing and research. But when we were working with all of these different authors, the contributors, artists from across the Pacific, as well as across Turtle Island, we were starting to see not only our own networks and the opportunities that we've had to visit, whether that be conceptually, like in the ideas, or actually in person, or something like this virtually, but also the ways in which other networks were being connected. And from this starting point, we also expanded some of our networks that we I would say they were taking, we were lighting them. They were starting that kindling across the Pacific. So that was a really exciting opportunity for us, and that the significance of the notion of gathering and visiting in terms of Indigenous methodologies, especially as a counter to settler colonialism and the attempts of settler colonialism to isolate and to render those significant kinship systems, to reduce them. And so all those ideas are part of the entire publication. And I see that publication as a container for all of these incredible constellations of thinkers and makers, both like from the past and the present and also in the future.
Yeah, and I think that, and that kind of comes into the next stage for us, which obviously isn't part of the reading material, but I think definitely speaks to, the next thing we actually have to write is, so the next project that we did, we really thought about this kind of like, I had been, thinking quite a bit about maker spaces and this idea. And now this is like a much popular term, but I remember reading a kind of like electronic magazine in the airport and laughing and thinking like, oh my God, all the things that they're describing here are actually indigenous methodologies. So like of bringing all these people into a group, not sitting in kind of silos, seeing what people come up with in this kind of collaborative method. And then, of course, going back to the team and then talking about, is this something we could consider for our next grant? And so what we had done is we had set it up as incubators, and each of those incubators have 6 to 9 artists. So we have emerging, mid-career, and established. We always have local artists that kind of represent that specific territory and spot. And then the other part is that we thought, because we took advantage of the fact that we like to spend time together, but live in different cities. And so we centered Winnipeg, Montreal, and Halifax as those kind of spaces. And for whatever reason, because Toronto is like a second home to me, Toronto got snuck in there, but that wasn't the original proposal. And so, I think that what's been really fun and exciting about what we're doing is there's been no expectation for the artists that they have to collaborate or that they have to make a work that's, a specific kind of thing. So what we do is we invite a group of artists and usually really kind, fun people that are open to working in this kind of method. We call it kind of like a boot camp, because you come for like 7 to 9 days and we stick you in a space with full access to any kind of technology and digital media, whatever. The first one that we did that Heather just pulled up the picture on was in Montreal. And so I'll let you talk a little bit about it, because you're the one that got to host that one.
This was our first formal incubator format. And incubators are just, like Julie's describing, we throw people in a room together, provide them with some tech support and lots of toys, and then they can work in old and new media and or the confluence of those things. And we try to get people to get artists to push themselves out of their comfort zones a little bit. And we do that by saying, you have 7 days to make work that we're going to show in the public. And so we're changing, we're playing with the timeline for that now. It's like, sometimes it's 10 days, sometimes it's 2 weeks, but I think the pressure component can be really generative. So this is, first one that was at Concordia for Nuit Blanche Montreal in 2019. And the majority of the artists who participated in this one were Inuit and Inuvialuit, because they were part of a project that I lead called Inuit Futures in Arts Leadership, the Pilimik project. Pilimik is the term in Inuktitut that means learning by observation and attention and effort. And so it's a project which aims to train and more Inuit into professional positions in the arts. And so a group of these artists came together with Caroline Monet, who's a French and Anishinaabe artist based in Montreal as well. And as you can see in the center panel here, this is Darcy Bernhardt, and she's a well-known painter. And so she came in and was doing drawings, and then she animated drawings. I don't know if you can see my cursor, I'm circling Tom's head, but she animated a story that Tom told. He's a storyteller, and so he told a story from their shared region. They're both in Inuvialuit. And that piece is now actually playing film festivals all over the world. It's been hugely successful. This work in the bottom corner is an animation of animation of a painting by Megan Kayak Monteith. She was mentored by Glenn Gear, who's there in the plaid shirt and the ball cap in the bottom photo, into how to do stop motion animation. And so she was painting on glass so that she could keep working with wet oil paint and do this animation of a family eating maktak together. And that piece has also been shown in a bunch of other places since then, and will be shown in coming up on March 25th, the opening of the new Inuit Art Center. So here's, you can see the back and the front of that installation. Glenn's animation is in the top left. My computer is really slow, so I apologize if I'm freezing on you. Or my internet's bad today.
I don't know if Carl, you want to add. I was just going to say the other thing I think that's kind of important to say is that, and Nor has participated in this way too, is that, you know, not only do we do the incubation in terms of for the artists, but in each one of them we've had a curatorial mentee. And so this one was Leslie Beardy, who was at the University of Winnipeg. Yeah, there she's all smiles. And then, you know, you go, Carla, because then we can talk a little bit about it.
And for those of you that read our piece, you can kind of see a lot of our methodologies are actually activated in what we're talking about right now. This idea of long-standing adaptation and use of technologies, that the concept of living archives and memory makers, but also the notions of gathering and visiting. So it's kind of like the idea that the things you were reading, the things we were arguing in this article are actually activated in our practices currently that we're sharing with you. So we had the opportunity to have an incubator boot camp here in Halifax and Jabuktuk at NASCAD. And then we gave everyone 7 days to make a new work. And we went over to PEI, to Charlottetown, to Art in the Open. So in the Atlantic region, there's a lot of smaller, but also really amazing, if you're an artist or curator and you're looking for experience of night festivals, Art in the Open in Charlottetown is a gem. It's a really special place. It's really artist focused. And so we went with this group of artists and we decided to actually rebuild Thema Ignaris's tent. And Julie, can you say a little bit more about the tent?
Sure, for sure. And so Thema is coming from Tahltan Nation, which, you know, I noticed quite a few West Coasters on the call. I was like, no judgment, no judgment. And so then, so the tent was a construction of a traditional tent that would have been used and designed in Tahltan territory. And so we made a mega creation, and then she uses a kind of, she replays Tahltan songs through the sewing machine as she sews each piece, the kinds of sounds, instead of the from the sewing machine, you actually hear the sounds being remixed and remastered. And then each piece that she makes is part of a giveaway as part of her potlatch methodology.
So we had Thema join us, Alberta Rose, Carrie Allison, Jerry Evans, Sebastian Aubin, and Caroline Monet. Did I forget anybody? Oh, no, everyone's there. So we were saying earlier, we wanted to always have local presence. And so, and a range of intergenerational range of artists, and also in terms of points in career, as well as emerging and more senior. And so in this case, we invited Jerry Evans, who's a very well-known Mi'kmaq printmaker. But we also had a local component of Carrie Allison, but Carrie Allison's actually born in Tsawwassen territory, but from Métis Cree territories in northern Alberta, who lives here and has been here and had just completed her master's at NASCAD. So it was nice to have a kind of two local artists, but one senior Mi'kmaq artist who also hadn't had an opportunity to play around with technologies in these ways, in terms of digital technologies, obviously adapted print technologies for a long time. So he ended up collaborating a lot with and having some mentorship from Sebastian Aubin, and really was thinking about a lot of the caribou, Halibu iconography in his print work, and the idea of wanting to bring the herds back, the populations back to both PEI and to Halifax. Because Nova Scotia, all the whole region, there were caribou here, and through settlement and through colonization and extraction of resources, the herds populations have been decimated. So he brought them home. And we were able to do a combination of Montreal and PEI at Nocturne here in Halifax several years ago. And this is the Treaty Gallery at NASCAD. And we took over, this is our port campus. We have 2 campuses or 3 campuses. And we used the windows to project Jerry's caribou and brought them back to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, if you can picture, so this is a really moving piece that Jerry did, as Carlos said. It's based in his printmaking practice of, like, he's from the Halapu First Nation. Halapu is caribou in Newfoundland. And if you can picture, this is just like the herd, you just see their antlers, but the herd is sort of continuously moving by. Imagine this, when we did this in PEI, this is the third installation of an incubator, like Carl was saying, but imagine this projected, 2 stories tall across treetops, because that's how it was. It came back into the land and it was projected by a high-powered projection into the trees. It was like, I have goosebumps thinking about it. It was such a beautiful and powerful installation that Jerry participated in. As you can see, because it's a night festival format, the work transforms from day to night. And that's something that we've been working through a lot, because there's something really compelling about these kind of one night only events where you get a lot of the members of the public out who would not normally engage in art in this way. And so we have found that one of our key strategies is to use the format of the night festival, the public art festival, in order to share a bit of history, context, local context, and also Indigenous history with visitors who come out at, sometimes thousands of times more than you'll ever get walking through museum doors.
Totally. So that goes back to our aim, our goal around thinking through, how do we radicalize space, or how do we shift publics, and how do we also engage spaces in a way that are decolonial, or bringing forward this notion of being in sovereignties. And so you have Julie?
I was just going to add, and the exchange and the collaboration. And that's what's so beautiful, that, that happens between the 3 of us, of course, but like, we get really excited when we get to work with folks like Nor and Leslie and Megan and Darcy, and also to the collaboration and exchange that happens with the artists, and I think Jerry's such a great example, because you have a senior established artist with an over 30-year career, and is getting excited to like work in brand new technologies that he's never had access to or hadn't thought about, or whatever the case is. And, and I'll do my little Jerry imitation, but it's like, he was mind boggled, and so, we also did a really nice work for him for Nuit Blanche in Toronto this year. And it's the same thing. It's just like his willingness to be open and exchange that information and work with other artists in the group was really incredible. And that's something that, we won't really, even when we write about it, it won't articulate itself properly, because it is really just a chemistry that ends up happening when you have good energy and positive people in the space that are really excited to be there, and that just feeds itself. And I think that one of the big takeaways from me getting to work with both Carla and Heather is that it's not work when it feels good. And it's also, it's that energy and synergy that's happening that, we get from the artists and the curators and the students. But we also, you get to see the kind of fruits of your labor at the end, where you're just like, wow, this was, exhausting, but awesome. And
totally. And if you saw the photo of us building Thema's tent, you can see that like everybody's helping. We had this incredible group of people. We brought our partners, we have children with us. It's a family affair. And this is the site we can imagining Jerry's gorgeous caribou running across those trees. And this is a site in Victoria Park in Charlottetown, just right on the ocean, where the city is actually trying to decolonize the plants and only have Indigenous plants within that site. So that's one of the reasons why we thought, oh, this is kind of a neat way of engaging with this particular space.
And we brought our families together quite strategically. My husband is a film editor and post-production designer. Julie's husband is an accountant, and Carla's husband is a mechanical engineer and builder. And so we like together. We have like, we travel with a team. We're going to raise their kids up to also have skills that are going to add to the GLAM family skills.
Yeah. If not, they get left at home.
But the artist here, as you can see, that's Sebastian Aubin on the far left with the drill in his hand. That's Thema. Jerry's on the ladder. Brian, Carla's husband, is in the back there. Like everyone is really, and that's our tech is to the side. So it's like everyone is pitching in, and it really does make it, to get back to what we were saying at the beginning, to get away from that idea that it's one person's project, that you have complete ownership over things, and to just leave that at the door, and to instead want to see everyone's success, and for the whole of the project to be more valuable because everyone has shared and been responsible for and contributed.
I think we only got about 15 minutes left, so I think we could probably just open up to have some.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing now. Just wanted to give us a little bit to.
And we're
look
updating
at.
our website. So more of our stuff will be on the website, hopefully in the next few months.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like they use it just months.
You're like, just assume it's going to be the summertime.
Just say, yeah.
Website development is not our highest priority. I will say that.
Also keep talking if there isn't questions, but we
Yes,
do really want to have some
100%.
space. Yeah, I was like, just so we're clear on that.
The last project that we didn't quite show was Gathering Across Moana, and that's the one that Noor worked very closely on.
Yeah.
And so we're very privileged to get to work with such talented and upcoming curator scholars who are, it's just so exciting to see what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
Especially, I think Jill, you were jumping in with a question, or I heard someone starting to talk. No, oh, sorry.
I think it's Noor.
Lean forward. Oh, was it Noor? Hi, Noor.
So I do want to save most of the time for questions from the audience, but I think I have like two pressing questions that I've always sort of like thought about when like working with you, reading about you and thinking about you. So I think as a curator, I get to sort of like take up some space. But yeah, I'm really excited about this idea of roots that Cheryl Lehrondell talks about in your essay, and also this idea of like gathering and visiting. Because for me, it's like changing these notions about what it means to be Indigenous, settler, and settler of color in relation and in place. And it's really sort of disrupting these kind of binaries and like discrete ideas we have about Indigenous studies and diaspora studies. So I wanted to ask, like, based on your practice as a collective and as individuals, like what strategies maybe that you might have for people trying to do this relational work in different communities or different spaces? Because yeah, I'm really excited about that.
I feel like Heather should answer like when she's talking to the student, like why, what's your motivation? I'm going to steal some of your stuff. What's your motivation for doing the work in the project, right? And I think I think for me, that's one of the key things. Do you trust the people that you're working with? And is there reciprocal relationship that's happening? Like, are you getting the same kind of out of it as the other person or the other party or the other organization? And I think that, I was teasing Heather, but like, I think asking those questions, and in particular for her, there's a lot of desire for people to want to study Inuit art because it's one of the main, that and Northwest Coast are the two main kind of things that kind of get largely focused on and exported globally. And so it's interesting to me because, sometimes I don't end up having to have those conversations with students. And I think that, it was a good kind of like discussion because I thought, yeah, like, what is the motivation? Why is it that you want to do this project? And are you leading this project? Because if you are leading this project, then it's not a collaboration. It's not a co-production. And in fact, I think that that's partly one of the most exhausting things is always being asked, to come into a project when it's already done or the parameters have already been determined. And like, you know this, you've worked with us for a long time. And so it's like, the reality is that it's really quite amazing if you let people work together and then see what they come up with, and I just think it's so basic, but it actually works really well if there's trust and the motivation is good and all parties are getting some sort of reciprocal relationship out of it.
Yeah. What Julie's referring to is the questions that I ask non-Indigenous grad students when they want to study with me and do a PhD with me. And it comes out of experience of having worked with students and, wanting to say from the very beginning, let's get on the same page about what the value of your project is and what it is that you're, why it is that you want to do this work. And if it's primarily to benefit you, then or if you're designing a project and then you're going to a community and say, hey, I want to look at this thing. Is that something that is a priority or an interest to the community? Are you really adding value to them? Is it research that they need or want, or are you coming in with a project predetermined? And that's not just for students, that's for all researchers. Lots of times, especially like about a month or less before grants are due, I get invitations by my colleagues, well-meaning invitations that say, hey, we'd love for you to join this project that we have. And I'm like, that's because you want to check the box that says you have Indigenous leadership. And so then you get put into a special category of research. And this is not the way that we do this work. And it doesn't matter if you have a great idea, you think you can help, you need to involve people at the very beginning and have a relationship before you tell them what you think and like say, this is how we're going to do this project now. And I think that, that's what you're getting at, Nora, is like, how do you build these relationships? Like, how do you get to the point where you do these things? And I think you need to think about it as coming from a place of authenticity. Do you have something to offer? Is there a relationship to be built there? And do you have the time to build that relationship? I think that's an important component of it too, because there's, our funding bodies are just coming around to understanding the Indigenous way of doing things. But like, it used to be that we couldn't put meals, you couldn't, buy someone a meal or bring food to a feast if it didn't have a research outcome. And you're like, but it does have a research outcome, but the research outcome is over years. And we need a lot of time to build the relationship before we start telling people what the relationship is. And so if you can't go and share a meal with someone, if you can't bring tea and show up with sandwiches for everyone, why are they coming? And what is it saying to you about their community? So I think that the relationship building it's all of it, that's the whole thing. And then when we are, as BIPOC peoples or as members of the queer community, whatever it is that you're bringing, when you bring that into an academic space or an art institution space, you're bringing your relationships. And so, it is you that is responsible to the community members. It is your reputation that will be hurt if the institution does something inappropriate. It is you that will answer to those people. And so when you are bringing your kin into these sites, you have to be really firm about the way that you're going to do it and what the expectations are and what the institution is allowed and not to do, because it's not the institution that gets hurt in the process, and it's your years and years of work that you're bringing into this. And and those relationship building, that is work. It's hard stuff.
And so that's also where if you're like, for us, because we've had kind of some years now that we've been working, we can place some of those demands on our institutions. We can provide those expectations. And because you're hosting, I'm an uninvited guest, but I have to also host. And I think through, what does that mean in terms of that idea, what I said earlier about reducing harm? And that's not only for the artists coming in, our speakers, but also students that we're working with and collaborating with. And so I think those are really key for settlers white settlers specifically, thinking about like the idea of being a part of something. And that's where your goal is that you're actually working with and for. You're not in a space of aboutness, and you're not in a space of I'm an expert. Because if you think that you're an expert in relation to, if you're coming from outside as for example, with Indigenous arts, right then when I meet someone who's a non-Indigenous person who says I'm an Indigenous art expert, I question why you're doing that work. Because again, that's about ego, and that's about career. That's about building and about providing research that is about something, not around collaboration, not about community accountability. You're not a steward, you're possessing, you're owning. And so that shift from possession to stewardship and collaboration and relationality, I think is really key. And going back to what Heather said, the authenticity of the relationships and that slowness. There needs to be slowness and time to develop those relationships. And to think sometimes I've stepped out of projects because it doesn't make sense for me to be in that role. So who's benefiting from the work for me, who's benefiting from my work? And if it's not BIPOC, students and collaborators and community members, then I'm not doing my job properly. Also bringing along white settlers in terms of active generosity, making sure that there's opportunity for dialogue and learning and all those important things around decolonizing our minds, our hearts, and our ways of being.
Oh, wow, all really very detailed and heavy responses. But yeah, like I think I resonate with that as well. And I'll be quick because I do want to, give space. But yeah, like this idea of like slowing down in the process of it and not necessarily completing a project before inviting others in. And that's what my construction has started. And that's what this exhibition in particular feels like as well, that there are some like starting points and people I actually want to work with. And then we get to discover and talk about it together, what we're actually sort of moving towards. So yeah, this practice has been really exciting, but yeah, I want to invite audience members to share their questions for the GLAM Collective, either through audio or through chat. We have about 5 minutes left.
Your poor construction. You can just...
I can hear the construction.
Yeah, it's all day long.
Yeah, if we did, poor Nora, I was like, oh, it's all day long. See, you should have stayed home. Anyways. I think that, you know, if we don't have a question, I think that there's some key things that I think that, oh, we got a question. You go ahead.
I was wondering about, because you said you've done a lot of work with like Australia and New Zealand and kind of all around the world. So a little bit about building those global connections and the kind of difference of being like on your own territory and then being in someone else's territory and that having that kind of like reciprocal learning going on, and how you cultivate these, particularly now when we can't travel as much, like how do you cultivate those kind of global connections?
Same way we're doing it now. I'd say that, you know, there's a couple of things I think that have provided really incredible opportunities. And so one of them was the Canada Council's Indigenous
Nations Exchange.
Yeah, curatorial exchange. And so I think that, you know, that provided opportunity for other Indigenous scholars and curators and arts workers to be able to connect and make those relationships. And I'd say that, you know, just as we joked at the beginning of like seeing each other at the bar, those relationships really become stronger and are much more, you're much more able to maintain them once that base is built. And so that base being built is just what Heather was talking about and Carla was talking about, you know, that, you know, you need food and you need an opportunity and you need to be able to talk and gather and participate. And I think that, you know, a lot of the work that we were doing in one of the new projects that we just formally applied for a partnership grant and have just finished or at the end of a partnership development grant is around Hawaii, New Zealand, Australia, Finland, Norway, Greenland, Canada, and the US. And so I think I got them all.
You did.
And I'm counting Hawaii and Alaska as their own countries, but anyways, and they should be. But I think for us, because some of that base foundation is laid, that a lot of those relationships are already happening because we already have personal relationships with key individuals in those existing countries who then vouch for us, then know that we do good work, and then we continue to keep networking and building on that existing relationship. And I think that, you know, even when we explained it in the kind of larger partnership grant, is I'd say like key is just having those opportunities. Like we were just in Australia when the pandemic started. We had brought a bunch of Indigenous students to an Indigenous methodology workshop where we had people from the various countries there. And I think that, you know, one of those opportunities, like now I talked to Sierra, one of the students that was just there and was on our last talk. She said now, like she's in a regular conversation with Kimberly, who's a curator in Australia, and all the other folks that were in there, and they've got a group thread with some of the students, and now they're building their own networks and opportunities. And just like a small amount of time, you know, with some food and some conversation, it goes a long way. And I think that, you know, those are those key foundations happen, and then we end up on what we're doing now, or at some point, hopefully getting to fly back.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, like, for me, you know, Julie had some really amazing existing connections in Australia and New Zealand. I had some, but I didn't have to the same degree. And when I was working with the National Gallery on Abenaquade as a curatorial team member, Julie was the one who immediately connected me with so many people Indigenous curators in Australia and New Zealand. So then we were able to bring that knowledge to Abenaqua Day for the International Indigenous Contemporary Art Show at the National Gallery. And so it was through my relationship with Julie and the trust that we have, then folks trusted me to be able to present and bring forward to the National Gallery artists that some of those curators were aware of, but a lot of folks, you know, there was some new opportunity to then share to the Indigenous division in Ottawa, those networks and build those relationships as well. So anyways, I feel like we are so lucky and so fortunate to work together.
Yeah, sorry, Carol.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
We are so lucky to work together, and our next big trip is going to be to see the Sami takeover of the pavilion at Venice, curated by Lisa Ravna and her colleagues. And so we got to be able to travel in 2022 because that's my number one priority for all of next year. Is like going to make all of this year worth it. Is going to see what is planned. And I think this is the part of it too, is to think about like just wanting to celebrate all the great work that's happening and lift each other up and be happy for and appreciate, understand, and then just keep sharing and let it grow. And, you know, at the beginning of this talk, we talked about not wanting to work from a place of scarcity, like there's only so much talent to go around, or there's only so much funding, or there's only so many opportunities. You know, that is not, you know, Indigenous peoples don't need to think that way anymore. I don't think that we need to think about it as being competition. You know, there's infinite like opportunities. And I think that this is one of the really exciting things, is that we get to see just an explosion of exciting work being produced all over the world now. We really are at a moment of resurgence, and hopefully that moment stays continuous.
Yeah, and I would just add that I think that that's the beautiful part, especially about the partnership grant for you, Heather. It's like, eventually you don't want to work that hard, you know?
I'm training and mentoring scores of other Inuit and Inuvialuit so I can, like, you know, I don't know, rest poolside all summer long in the future. Just like, you know, make lots of space for other people to do the work.
And there's lots of work.
Thank you all so much, and I apologize again. Hopefully it'll quiet down soon. But yeah, thank you all so much for sharing, like, just your history of collaboration, your collaborative desires, and a few weeks ago I was talking about, I brought up Irit Rogov's ideas around becoming research and moving away from stable bodies of knowledge, and ego as well when it comes to knowledge production. And it was just such a treat to see this sort of unfold through listening to you, and how resources and contacts and networks are not necessarily something to protect, but to share with those that you trust. So yeah, thank you all so much for your time and your generous spirit. And I know you all have to go. And thank you so much. And enjoy your days. And hopefully,
thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. Congratulations on your exhibition. And thanks everybody at the Or Gallery.
Or Gallery.
For tuning in. So many people on Musqueam territory. Nice to see you.
Yeah, cool.